Welcome, Sal Mercogliano. He is the associate professor of history at Campbell University. How are you doing there, Sal?
I'm doing fine, Michael. A little full on potato salad from this weekend. I've been doing some new recipes I found online, so I've been a little busy.
There you go. Hot sauce, my friend. Hot sauce is
you never go wrong with hot sauce. You're exactly right about that, Michael.
You never do. Let's talk about this new appointment here, the new port czar. What is going on here?
So we got the appointment of Stephen Lyons, former commander of the United States Transportation Command. He's replacing John Beccari. Now, Beccari stepped down in April, and we've had a little bit of a gap here till this appointment. And it's a really interesting appointment. It's definitely a much different one than Beccari. Beccari had been the Secretary of Transportation. Lyons is four-star U.S. Army general, has massive experience in logistics, but on the military side. As the commander of Transcom, he oversaw both airlift, sea lift, and surface distribution, basically road and rail. And so he's coming in now with the goal of really preventing a potential slip back to the problems we saw early last year.
I want to kind of get your thoughts on Beccari's achievements, or what happened during his time as his tenure of the port envoy, and how now this rolls into the appointment of Lyons, because we're talking about this about month and a half break in between the two. Was there stuff that Beccari did really, really well that are now going to continue to roll into Lyons' tenure, or is there things that Lyons is going to pick up and say, you know what, we're going to redo what Beccari did?
Well, one of the things I think that Beccari did really well is he was a great bridge between government and commercial. He came in as an outsider that can bring in these different groups, sit them down together, and converse with them. And Beccari knew that language. He had that experience from the transportation department, and he was able to bring it in. Lyons comes in with a little bit of a problem here in that he has dealt with commercial before. He's dealt with shippers and ship lines and airlines and ports, but from the military side. And so he's got a different problem to tangle here. He can't come in as a four-star general and order people around. At the same time, he's going to come up to speed in dealing with the commercial side, a commercial side that does not typically deal with the military. What Beccari was able to do also was to motivate a lot of people, and be that one-person representative from the Secretary of Transportation, from the president, in the room. The problem you have now is you have Daniel Maffei over at the Federal Maritime Commission, who is voicing more concern and more oversight he's requesting over shipping. And then you have a new appointee at the Maritime Administration, Ann Phillips, who is just coming into her role. And so Lyons is going to be caught between several issues here on the federal side. We also saw one of the big issues that Beccari had instituted along with the ports in LA and Long Beach was this potential to use hyper-demurrage, this new, detention fee that was kind of hung over shipping companies back in October. It's never been used, but we've seen some recent news reports, one from Maersk in particularly, saying that the port of LA and Long Beach may be thinking about implementing this fee again because we're seeing an uptick in dwell time of containers in LA and Long Beach.
It's really interesting. So when we talk about Lyons, and you talk about where he's coming from and his background and what he's got to get up to speed, do you see this as potentially something that is needed in this arena, this different kind of thought process from the military?
Well, we've seen, great times when military people come in and can handle a crisis. I think of General Honore down in New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina. The problem you have there is, again, this is not a kind of an emergency situation. You've got to deal with these commercial firms, and their modus is a lot different in commercial logistics than military logistics. There's the finance side, there's profitability. There are all those aspects that in many ways the military doesn't always think about. And I'm not saying Lyons is not going to be good at that. I've had experience seeing him. I think one of the things that stands out for me with Lyons is that during his tenure, he identified a substantial issue at Transportation Command, and that had to do with sea lift readiness. He went before Congress on multiple times, talked about it, and literally could not get the point across. And so he led an exercise that failed demonstrably. I mean, he just activated all the ships in the sea lift fleet and they failed. And he went back and told them, I told you this was going to fail. And I did it in an exercise. Now we've got to be prepared for this in time of war. So I think he's going to come in and really take a look at where the stress is on the system, identify it, and attempt to resolve it. The problem he's going to have, again, small staff, not a lot of people backing him up, and he's going to have to deal with this divided chain of command between the FMC and the Maritime Administration.
So let's talk about that a little bit from the perspective of the supply chain task force itself. Is that supply chain task force in existence to kind of be that liaison between the FMC and now the Maritime Department? And should there be now kind of like this middle ground that hopes to be reached?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that they went ahead and appointed him, because we didn't get any indication of that. When Bakari left, there didn't seem to be an urgency, number one, because again, we've gapped this for over a month. And it seemed like things were going to basically resolve this port envoy. We weren't going to need it. However, it becomes very clear now that we're seeing issues beginning to develop. We still have 25 ships waiting off LA and Long Beach, waiting to come in. We see the potential for maybe problems again with Q3 right around the corner here, and shipping coming across and clogging the ports again. So I think that the White House wants to be proactive. Again, it never hurts to put a military person in charge, in many opinions, to do this. And I think also the question is, what can the Transportation Department do? You know, I've talked about the fact that the four horsemen of the Buddha judge, you know, the heads of aviation, rail, road, and sea, should be really, that kind of four group that's looking at this issue. And Bakari could be that kind of liaison to those four and helping with this. I think the Port Czar title may not be the most accurate depiction for him, because I think he's looking at a lot more now than the ports.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know Lyons that well, or his work previously. There's a little concern there that you would have to not be able to convince people with words and have to actually show them in an actual physical failure, which to me isn't really a good thing. That's kind of a detriment there. But I also like the aspect of him looking at this from a military perspective, because our supply chains and our ports are a matter of security for our economy in the U.S. So I kind of like that. Do you have thought on that?
No, I agree. I mean, obviously you don't want to prove a failure, so that's not what he's going to do. But my point about raising that is that he's not afraid to make a point and to demonstrate what needs to be done. And so I think as a leader, I think he's going to be able to come out and really raise this. The issue you do have is, of course, coming without the experience of the commercial side, will the commercial entities buy into him in this? They don't want to spend the time having to get somebody up to speed. And so, again, who's going to be staffing, who's going to be the personnel behind him, I think is going to be a big issue as he goes forward. I'm not going to be surprised to see him excel at this, but I do think he's got some serious hurdles he has to overcome to be credible in any sort of discussion. I think one of the first ones he's going to have to deal with is the contract negotiation on the West Coast between the ILWU and the PMA.
Coming up on just about a month before that happens. Sal, really quickly before we let you go, I want to get your thoughts on the FMC, and you mentioned the commercial side of things, those large ocean carriers. Does this appointment add any backbone to the FMC and the pressure that they can put on these large ocean carriers, or is it still, the question that we've got here is political clout? Are they still not getting enough political clout to really bow to the pressure of the U.S. government?
Well, I've been really impressed to see Daniel Maffei really step up. I mean, you've seen the FMC do several things. They had that huge decision against Hop Hog, $822,000 in detention demurrage. Rebecca Dye, the commissioner, just did her report on Fact Finding 29, this 2-year investigation where she's talking about issues of detention and demurrage and freight costs. I think Maffei, along with this agreement now with the Department of Justice, has a lot more power. He has gone to Congress, asked for a 5% increase in budget to staff the FMC up to a higher level. And I think the big thing that we're going to see coming out from him is really a change in what we've seen in the FMC before. He is talking specifically about being more proactive, more monitoring, and more oversight. And I think that's following along with what Congress wants with the Ocean Shipping Reform Act that's being pushed through both houses.
Excellent stuff. Thank you so much. Sal, you have a wonderful rest of your day in recovery from your long weekend. I'm sure you were out getting things done.
I appreciate it. You too. Have a good one, too.
You got it.